Good morning, everybody. My name's Peter Jeffrey, and I'm one of the business development managers at Momentum Software Solutions. And I'd like to welcome you to this webinar that we're running in conjunction with our partner, Expense Manager, here on this soggy Thursday morning. Just a couple of points of etiquette as far as the webinar is concerned. It would be appreciated if you could keep your microphone muted. If you have any questions as we go through, then please add them to the chat at the top of on the ribbon. And we do have a Q&A session at the end, and we'll go through everything that people have put into the chat just then. If you do want to have a question answered through the process, please use the raise your hand button in the reactions tab, so that we know that that you do have something that you want to ask. So going on to the next slide, Phil. So the people doing the most of the presentations today are from Expense Manager. So we have Phil Vella, who's our channel partner manager and our primary contact between the two organizations. He's going to tell you what the concepts are behind Expense Manager, why it's such an important tool. We're then going to hand over to Yasir, who's going to run through a live demonstration and show you not only how Expense Manager works, but how it integrates into MyUp Advanced and EXO. And then back to Phil, who's going to run through the benefits of Expense Manager in terms of return on investment, hard dollar and soft dollar savings. And then, as I say, we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So I'm going to hand over to Phil.
Great. Many thanks for the introduction, Peter. And thanks to the whole team at Momentum Software Solutions for having us on the webinar today. As Pete mentioned, my name's Phil from Expense Manager, and I work with all of our ERP partners to ensure our clients are getting the best of both worlds, a leading ERP solution alongside a best-of-breed expense management platform. So first of all, I just want to go through a little bit of an introduction about who we are and what we do. So Expense Manager is a cloud-based expense and invoice automation platform, and we have a wide number of modules on offer. Firstly, we offer expense management, which covers things like staff out-of-pocket expenses, company credit cards and mileage. And then on the reverse, we also manage things like supplier invoices, purchase orders, budgets and travel, all while seamlessly integrating to all the MYB enterprise products, including EXO and Advanced. Our modular approach is able to grow with your business. You might have a need to manage supplier invoices right away, and you can implement that today, and then explore our other modules like expenses, budgets, and travel when the time comes. We're constantly developing new modules, and this is really driven by client feedback. We're set to release a virtual card offering in the second half of 2022, which will allow organisations to issue virtual cards to staff to add them to their mobile wallet, which is able to provide organisations with much greater control than offered by traditional corporate cards. But in the workshop today, we're very excited to showcase one of our latest modules on offer, Throw Matching, which allows staff to easily match AP invoices, purchase orders, and delivery dockets all in one platform and from any device, whether it be from a laptop, iPad, or even a mobile phone. And you see we'll actually touch on that in the webinar a little bit in a moment. It's sad to say that 65% of mid-sized companies in Australia and New Zealand are still processing expense and invoice claims completely manual. CFOs today know that going digital is now an essential part of the process, and of course, COVID-19 has truly highlighted that. Manual processes are time-consuming, which means costly, but also error-prone and risky. Automation delivers benefits immediately across many pain points that companies have managing spend manually. And it's not just benefits that deliver to the finance team, but end users are able to be equipped with mobile business tools like mobile apps so they can concentrate on their core roles rather than shuffling paper. When it comes to expense and AP processes, one of the greatest strains on costs and efficiency is the high volumes of paper associated with manual methods. Another common problem is the lengthy approval times, which further compounds the cost to process. Industry experts and from our own experience in AP automation show the dramatic difference processing an expense or invoice manually versus in an automated process. If you're processing 50 expense claims in a month, it's a saving of approximately $25.80 per claim, which results in over $15,000 saving per annum. If you're processing 500 supplier invoices per month, it's a saving of over $12 per invoice or over $76,000 per annum. And we can provide you with an accurate savings calculator to allow your organization to drill down into your actual cost of process so you can really highlight the savings you could achieve. But aside from the dramatic cost reduction in labour and improvements, there's also a number of soft dollar benefits that come alongside efficiencies as well. Because the process is faster, it raises a company's efficiency, and being digital totally eliminates manual document storage, so receipts and invoices are available at any time online with easy access. Errors are dramatically reduced, and fraud control is further improved. I'll now pass over to my colleague Yasir to jump into the demonstration of the platform. So over to Yasir.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, I am product manager here at Expense Manager. We'll be taking a bit of a look at the system, kind of look under the hood, see what's going on, how it works. I'll just share a screen. Can you guys confirm you've got that? Hey, Phil?
Yep, all good.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah, too easy. Okay, so look, what we're going to run through today is a bit of a generic sort of a webinar. Obviously, there's a lot of you on here, and I'm sure your requirements are all at least slightly different, if not, very different from each other. So we're going to keep things a little bit generic and simple and straightforward. Obviously, we are trying to be able to execute all of this within a certain time frame. Surely you've got lots of things on, as anyone would. Another thing to just reiterate here, we're going to be looking at essentially the whole thing here, right? So expenses, cards, receipts, POs, and all that. Now, you do keep in mind that this is a comprehensive solution, but it is also modular. So you don't actually have to get it as I'm going to show you today. There'll be things you can turn off. For example, three-way matching. A lot of you might be interested in that, but some of you might be only really needing two-way matching. So we can do that as well. That's what the system's always been doing, actually. Three-way matching, something newly released. So do keep in mind as I'm going through here, there's lots of on-off switches on our end that we can flick to make the system work for you the way you'd like it to work. So there's always room for a personalized demonstration with one of our sales teams or myself or even Phil, and we'll take you through the system the way it would work for you or the way it would need to work for you. Having said all of that, let's sort of look at how those savings are generated. That Phil was mentioning, we're going to look into the system now. So this small screen in the front is going to serve as my mobile app. Now, I'm going to basically start things off with your expenses, so both card and reimbursements, and then we'll switch over to the desktop, and then we'll also pick up your three-way matching and the rest of that process, and of course, push things out to Mob Advanced. So pretty much logging straight into the system is Kylie Magenta. Now, obviously, you should be logging into the app on the phone. This is available across app stores, both Apple and Android, so there's no problems with that. And also globally, so if you do ever travel, we have a lot of clients that do a lot of traveling, a lot of here and there kind of stuff. So basically logging straight into the app. So go right to my receipt screen over here. And as you can see, I've got a couple of receipts already set up, pretty much waiting. But what I want to do is I want to add a new one. So I'm going to just go into the plus over here, go into new receipt, and that'll take me straight to my new receipt screen. In this particular screen, you can click the camera or tap the camera on the phone, of course, which would then open the camera where the photo's at. You'll have the option. But just before I do that, I want to quickly talk you through some of the properties here. So obviously you've got your basic things like GST, expense date, supplier. You've got the company, which in this case is entity. So this could be mapped to things like branch, Mob Advanced, or other systems. This cost center, which would be most likely your sub-account or departments. Then you've got obviously your projects and expense types. Expense types tend to be your GL codes, of course. And there's a description option here. I do want to stress that these are just very generic setups here. We could have a lot more fields enabled. We can take away some of these fields. We can rename these fields. So there's quite a lot of flexibility from that standpoint. So we'll go straight into now the camera. And from here, I'll just say, I'm going to do, let's do taxi cab charge 6283. Simply add that in. Obviously, as I said, this would be a picture you'd be taking on the phone. Now Kylie's added that image. Now that'll be scanned, picked up for these details, and that'll essentially scan as soon as I hit save. But before I do that, while I'm in here, I'm just going to quickly select the actual expense type and maybe provide a little bit of detail and say this was for a taxi to client lunch or something like that, and we'll simply hit save. And this becomes part of those other receipts, which are all my waiting receipts. So now as you can see that's scanning, this will probably take 20, 30 seconds really. But while that's scanning, what I'll do is I'll also add another receipt. And this time, instead of saving it in, I'll actually add it to a reimbursement claim. What happens with your waiting receipts is they get picked up by your credit card feed that's coming into the system essentially automatically every day. And as soon as we receive that feed, we'll go ahead and look for the matching receipts for each transaction and automatically reconcile that for you. We'll have a look at that in a bit more detail later on. For now, let's quickly do a reimbursement one as well. So this will be something that staff is spending out of pocket. This time, let's say Kylie forgot the card and just spent some money, which now she's gonna put a claim back in for. So we'll go into the plus, new receipt, camera, and let's say petrol 63.48. And let's say $63.48, which is what will be scanned here, was not the total reimbursable amount. The actual amount was just $50, which is what the petrol was for. And the rest of that is actually just snacks and things she doesn't want to get reimbursed. So she can either override the scanned amount by just entering her amount, or she can also use things like split expense, where she can split that extra bit off and mark it as personal in the system. Now, what I'll do here, though, of course, I'll simply go into select petrol here as the expense type and add a little bit of description. Let's just say Rego 123 ABC. And this time, instead of saving, I can add it to a claim. Before I do that, I want to quickly show you a bit of a conditional thing that happens here. So as soon as I change my expense type from petrol to something like, let's say, domestic accommodation, it automatically expands what's required against that in terms of information. So now I need to enter city, arrival, departure, booking number, guests, obviously, which is all relevant to domestic accommodation. I can also essentially make some of these particular things that show up conditionally required. So when I've selected that, I need to enter at least my departure or booking number, etc. Now, these are also customizable, so you can also decide, I don't need all the other things. All I really want is departure and booking number and maybe guests, something like that. I'll just revert this back to petrol. And we'll do what we're going to do. We're going to go add to claim. And this time we're going to add it to a reimbursement claim. In my system, I've set up my claims to be set up basically on a monthly basis. Every month a new claim shows up. So if I click into that, now I'll see I've got reimbursement 3462. This is Kylie's monthly claim. So anything she spends and expects to be evened out later, she's just going to keep on adding to that. She can also create new reimbursement if she wants. So this could be something that she wants going through a bit sooner than the normal periodic one. Or it could be essentially the normal process is you don't have a monthly claim, you really just have the odd ad hoc reimbursement, in which case you'll only have that option. Now I'll go into 3462, add to claim. So reimbursement 3462 now, it's Kylie's reimbursement, currently not submitted, $191 so far. You've got a bit of a description here, which she can click into and edit as well. There's the claim period, which you see here is monthly, 1st of the 10th, 31st of the 10th. My system, I've got it set up where I can click and change that. But of course, you can leave that to be, you can lock that in as well. So you just can't change that. It's always going to be monthly. Now, just a quick chat about approvers. I think probably the strongest piece in our system is the approval flows. We can handle very complex approval flows, or of course, your simple one-step line manager approvers, Kylie's managers, John Red. But these can be triggered based on lots of different things. So you can have the cost center determining who the approver is. You can have the supplier for an invoice determining who the approver is. You can also have a mix of things. So for example, I've got line manager, but as soon as it goes over a certain amount, the system would automatically add person that's also authorized to approve that higher limit that John's not allowed to approve. Say John's only allowed to approve 500, for example. Now, without much further ado, I will essentially go ahead and just be able to submit this forward to John Red. So this is my reimbursement claim. I've built it over the last month or so. I'm ready to put this forward. I'll simply go into more and submit this forward. Now, we do have a mileage claim, a system mileage expense type, which is actually facilitated well with a map and everything and auto-calculates everything. But because of time, I'm just going to quickly skip that for now, and we can always look into that a little bit later, but do make a note that we have mileage options here if you need it. For now, I'll submit this forward. This will trigger an email going out to the approver, John, who will then be able to simply come into the system, also on the app if he likes, or on the desktop, and approve that forward and essentially send it off to finance to process and pop into my bets in this case. Now, what I've come on to here is the My Claims page on the actual app. We also have the same type of visibility built into the desktop. This is actually telling me where all my claims are. So Kylie's unsubmitted claims, Kylie's pending claims, Kylie's rejected claims, approved claims, all of these are pretty much easily available for her to see where things are at. She doesn't have to follow anyone up. It's all about increasing the visibility of the process as well as, of course, streamlining and automating it. Now we'll simply hop out of here, switch things over to the desktop. So we'll log in again as Kylie on the desktop. And now I go straight back into the My Claims page here. So in the My Claims page, same type of visibility on the desktop that I was mentioning before. And I've got my claims listed here. So I've got different types of claims. I've got Amex card, purchase order, tax invoice. If I go to pending approval, you'll find that I've got my reimbursement here. So I'll just go by updated date. So that's my reimbursement 3462 sitting in pending approval. And then now I can go back to not submitted. Before I go into the next thing, which is going to be the actual card claim as well, we're going to quickly take a tour of the vault. So I'll click into the documents here. So I'm going to look at where all my documents live. And I'm just going to highlight that, look, while you can get your receipts into the system by taking pictures and things like that through the app, you can also simply email your receipts forward. So now we're living in a digital era, of course, so maybe you're getting your receipts emailed to you anyway, maybe like an Uber receipt or something like that. You can simply forward that onto this email address. It'll do the same thing. It'll add it to this vault. It'll scan that for all the amounts and everything. And then you can later come onto it and code it and things like that. And you can also upload your receipts from here. While we're here, I'm going to mention also that you can also email invoices. In fact, this is the way to get invoices into Expense Manager. The supplier sends you an invoice, you forward it on to this particular email address. This email address, as well as the receipts one, is unique to the user that whose vault you're in. So if you email it here, it will show up in this particular vault, not anyone else's vault. But we do have a delegate and stand-in approver, stand-in delegate type of setup here where you can have multiple people accessing a particular vault if you need to. So there's all of those types of flexibilities as well, which get taken up quite regularly. Hopping back onto the home screen here, we'll just go into the actual Amex card now. On the Amex card, basically this is how every one of our claims will look. You'll have the document on the left, that's your document viewing panel. You've got your header here, so basically the claimant is, amounts, totals, things like that. And also, obviously, the actual transactions and expenses and items here. So what you'll notice here is obviously all the transactions are already in here. As I was saying before, these are coming in automatically with a live feed from your bank. So this is a daily feed essentially. So if you've got a corporate card, all of your transactions will show up automatically here. So I'll just click into one of these. What we're bringing is things like amount, GST, date, and even sometimes the supplier's name, for example, Stanford Plaza, which is always going to be part of your card feed. And then what we do with that is we automatically look in that vault that I was just showing you to pull in the right receipt and match it to the particular transaction based on the fields that I've just mentioned. And what happens then is things like trip purpose, sometimes things like expense type, all of these things can automatically be added to that transaction record, making it a complete record where I don't actually have to do anything. So really all I've done is taken a picture on my phone, and that's it. The transaction shows up automatically, it pulls in the receipt automatically, it populates the rest of the details automatically, and now really all I have to do is come in here, make sure everything's blue, meaning it's good to go forward, or of course if there are red things, which I've left here for this demo, you can always work your way through it. So I'll show you what the process for that looks like as well. So I'll click into the first one. Now this is my detailed view, so I've switched over to this tab here. If I go back here, that's the rest of the transactions. I'll just go back into that now. And from here, all I have to do is click this button to go to the next invalid expense. It takes me straight to this one, and it says there's a receipt required, but the system couldn't find the right receipt in the system. So maybe we didn't take a picture when we were supposed to, maybe we forgot to do it. In that case, you can always do things like claim an exception. So you can say reason for exception is, I forgot to take a picture, till ran out of paper. I'm sure we've heard all sorts of excuses here. So we can get pretty creative with this, I suppose. But of course, I'll save that in. And now this is an exception that's pending approval. So if I go back to the Amex card here, that particular red one has now become blue here. However, there's a red E here, meaning this exception needs to get approved by John Red, Kylie's manager, saying, who acknowledges essentially, particularly that I know that Kylie's lost a receipt here, but I'm still going to obviously let that go through. And that obviously becomes part of reports in the back end, which you can run later to see, hey, there's too many expenses coming through with that receipts for Kylie or anyone else, and you can obviously have that chat thereafter. I will click into this particular line now, which is another red one. In this case, I've left the expense type blank just to showcase one neat feature here, which is our FBT wizard. So as soon as I select something like entertainment, which has obviously FBT linked to it, I'll just have a recipients box pop up over here, where now I'll be able to add my recipients. So I can say, I want to add another person. Let's say this is another employee who was traveling in. That was Jenny. We'll add her in. We'll also add a client. We'll say this was John, Jody, add them in. So let's say Jody, John. As you can see, I'm simply just easily adding my recipients here, making sure that I've got my actuals done correctly. Of course, you can switch this module. There's a bit of an on-off switch in the back whereby you'll nominate only numbers if you're doing 50-50. I will add a little bit of description here as well. So let's say client lunch, and we'll save that in. And now we'll hop back to the Amex card. You notice everything's nice and blue. Of course, that the exception's still there. We do have automated exceptions. So from your card feed, oftentimes you'll have transactions like, for example, a travel service fee transaction, which doesn't get its own receipt, but you can have a rule set up where, hey, if it's travel service fee and it's under $25, just automatically approve that. We can automatically code the GL code for you based off of the bank feed, the card feed, and this is obviously going to work for certain cases. Other cases, you'll want the user to manually select that for you. Not often, not every time. It's super apparent from the card transaction file. Now what I'll do is I will of course submit this forward to John Red as well. Now John will get again an email. John will be able to come in and approve that forward. But before I do that, I will jump into John's profile. Actually, let's do that now, and then we'll come back to POs and pick up the way matching altogether. So we'll log out over here, go into John's profile on the desktop, coming straight into my approvals. So the process for the approvals is very straightforward as well. Obviously, you want to remove the hurdles of getting this process working properly, which is a great part of driving the efficiency there. So we'll simply come onto the approval screen. All I need to do is basically I can just select all from here and simply approve directly. Or of course, if I want to look into each claim, I can go into 3462. I can see that there's 3 items here. I can look at the actual receipts on the left. I can see that there's $50 claimed here and there's $63.48 on the receipt, which I'm happy with. So I can also go into the details. I can go ahead and change company, cost center. I can code this again. I can change expense types. I can split the expense type as well. So I can add that I also want this to be picked up, for example, by marketing, because this car is a shared resource and I want this to be split 50%. So as you can see, it's 50% across both finance and marketing now. And then I can simply save that. In this case, for the demo, I'll keep it simple. Just save it as is. And we'll hop back into the reimbursement. And now, of course, I'll just approve this forward. Now I've got my system set up where it'll automatically move to the next claim for me. So it's gone to Amex, obviously driving that efficiency again. It's little things that really make a difference. I'll simply hop onto that red E, which is the pending exception we had for the lost receipt or the forgotten receipt rather. So John comes in here as an approver. John's able to go into exception approval and just tick that to approve. Of course, John could do things like dispute the expense. If it was a reimbursement and there was a lost receipt, John might ask the person to say dispute and say things like go back to the merchant and find one, etc., or something like that. In this case, of course, we'll just leave this approved over here. So we'll reapprove that. Go back into Amex card. Sorry about that. Got a bit of a cold. Now, of course, I've approved that, so that's become a green E over here, which means just like the other one that was automatically approved, this one too is approved, meaning now I can actually put this claim forward to my finance team, will process and post-process, essentially make sure all the coding is correct and post forward. So we'll just go ahead and do that. We'll approve that forward. And now we've sent those 2 claims over. What we'll do now is we'll go back to Kylie's profile. We'll pick up a purchase order. attach a receipt to it and attach an invoice to it and then put that forward as well. And then we'll come into the finance view with Jackie all together in the end. Now, as I said, I'll keep this pretty straightforward and generic because I do want to tread that fine line between people that do two-way matching and not complicate this too much for them, as well as obviously not have it too simple for those that are doing three-way matching. So we'll log out over here. We'll go back into Kylie's profile. Kylie's profile we keep coming back to because we're using the claimant profile here, which is where people are generating claims like POs, invoices, and expense reimbursements, things like that. So back into Kylie's profile here, I've actually already set up a PO in the back end, but what we'll do is we'll do another one. So we'll create PO from scratch. Now, just to highlight, you can do this on the mobile as well. Our system is very mobile friendly. It drives that on-the-go experience as well. So you can raise a PO on the phone. You can approve POs on the phone, obviously receive invoices and code and things like that all on the phone. But for this demo, of course, we're going to keep it here just to keep it straightforward. We'll go on to the purchase order. First thing you want to do for your purchase order is add a supplier. So we'll just type in the comma here and save, which opens the PO. It allocates a PO number and it opens the PO up for me here. And now what I can do is I can simply, oftentimes you might want to attach a quote to your POs as well. So you'll simply go into upload and now pick up the actual quote. So I'll just go into my desktop and find the PO quote. And now that's come in. Essentially, basically, you'll build up the PO here. So you'll go into the first line. You've got the quote there. So you'll do something like, let's say it's $80. We're ordering 2 of these here. We're just going to say staff amenities for simplicity. And we're going to say something like, let's say this is going to be received in 2 batches as they don't have a lot of stock. So while we're ordering 2, most likely we're going to get 1 at a time, which is why we're going to raise the purchase receipt for 1. And we'll save that in now. And essentially, this is a PO that's pretty much as good as ready to go and be approved by John. As we've seen with the approval process, it's pretty much the same thing that we've just seen, so I won't revisit that with the PO here. But it works the same way. There's a slight difference, which is basically on approval of the PO, this can be emailed out to the supplier's default email address automatically. Or if we leave that unchecked, this means it'll come back to Kylie in an email, and then Kylie can manually forward that on as well. Maybe she wants to attach some other documents or essentially put that forward. Now, with this particular check, that can be checked by our approver, John Red, as well. So he'll have the option of checking that, making sure it goes out. So this isn't just Kylie's decision here. And at this stage, of course, I can create multiple lines on my PO. I can do quite a lot of things, but for this demo, I'm just going to keep things a little bit straightforward and simple. Just go ahead and save that, and we'll go into Action Submit. Now that's gone forward to John Red. So that was 3474. I'm just going to go to Pending Approval, and we'll see here that I've got a particular PO that's here, which is 3474 purchase order, sitting in pending approval. What I'm going to do is let's fast forward. Let's say we've essentially started. This was approved and everything went through out to the supplier. Now we're starting to receive invoices and items. So we'll go into approved. So this would be an approved PO. So I've already done the same PO before, which is $176.3466. So I'll click into that. Now you can raise a purchase receipt from the left here as well. So you'll basically what you'll do is you'll click purchase receipt and select the PO within there to then receipt that PO. Or you can go on the PO and create your purchase receipt from here. So which is generally how people operate with this because it makes more sense and it's a bit more logical, I suppose. But of course, if you do it the other way, there's no penalty. I'll go ahead and do create purchase receipt and simply go ahead and select the item. The items will be shown by the description. And then I can simply go into saying I want 1 of these that's been receipted, simply hitting plus. And then all I need to do is go ahead and submit that forward. Now that's automatically been approved as a purchase receipt. There are other things we can set up essentially for approval flows and whatnot, even for receipts. But this demo, I'm keeping things very simple. So I've just gone and auto-approved that. So now Kylie has actually receipted that 1 of the 2 here. So if we go essentially, next step here is I've got the purchase order, I've got the receipt. I can always go back into it. I can return items as well. So I can say I want to return items. It'll tell you you've got 1 so far. So do you want to return that 1? Yes, I want to. Now I can go ahead and return that. Of course, for this one, I'm going to keep it as is. And we're going to put that to 0. And then do done. And we'll just X out of that. Now, essentially, we're moving to the next step. As I said, I'm going to keep this pretty straightforward. So we're going to go straight to the invoice now. So expense manager, and then you'll go onto the home page here, and you'll find your tax invoice as well from Nakama. So we'll go into that particular invoice. On this invoice, obviously, we'll do things like the OCR scanning. So we'll pick up that this is Nakama's invoice. We'll pick up via the ABN, by the way, and then we'll pick up things like descriptions and invoice numbers and due dates and all of that stuff, whatever we need to pick up. If the PO number was on here, we'd automatically pick up the PO as well. But if it isn't on the actual document, we can always do things like having you select it manually yourself. So as you can see, that's 3466 that we've already added. Once I select that, I can also then select the right purchase receipt. So as you can see, it's showing now the purchase order within the tax invoice, showing me which purchase order it was. And then from here, I can simply go into the purchase receipt as well and attach that purchase receipt that I had before. Now, before I do anything else, I do want to quickly show you couple more things related to scanning, if you like. So what we do in terms of fraud prevention here, which is something that's actually really appreciated by our clients, is we automatically validate the bank details that are coming in on the invoice against what's stored for this supplier in the system. So for example, with Moab Advanced, our suppliers actually sync over from Moab Advanced. So when you sync that over to Expense Manager, you can also sync the bank details, and then we'll actually check these details from the invoice against that, just to make sure there's no interception of the invoice and changing the bank details or anything like that. If it all matches, we'll simply say payment info verified. If it doesn't match, we'll actually say it hasn't matched, and then we've got built-in workflows to manage that discrepancy, whereby you can actually change the details in the system, or you can, of course, have the person go back out to the supplier and confirm. The supplier can send in another one, or of course, we can simply ignore the mismatch in the case of, for example, it didn't scan correctly, or the details were mistyped by the supplier, whatever the case may be. And then the other thing as well, which I haven't enabled on my demo site, it seems, but I do have things like supplier payment averages as well, where we'll be tracking what your normal payments are, say your last 6 payments to the supplier. And if this one seems like it's way different, and obviously you'll manage that threshold, we'll actually flag that for you, saying, hey, usually you pay them $100, this one's come in for $1,000, just making sure you're aware of that. And other, those types of things are built into the system. But back now here to the actual purchase receipt and three matching. I've got that invoice that's already come in. Obviously, we've selected the purchase order. We've got the purchase receipt as well. Now, in terms of managing the coding, I'll just quickly go to the purchase order. You can see essentially that I'll just hop over to the purchase receipt as well, actually. And then from here, I can pull in this particular line. So as you can see, we receipted one of one, so which is the one that we receipted. I can pull that in here. And now that purchase receipt on this particular tax invoice screen will be drawn back to 0, saying that that one that was receipted has actually been added to an invoice. So essentially you can manage that type of linking and pulling of POs into receipts, into invoices and things like that pretty easily as well. I will just take the other line off for now. And from here, what we'll do is we'll actually go ahead and, because this is matched with the purchase order, we can actually submit this forward and skip the whole approval flow here. So John, although is listed as an approver, because he's already approved the PO and this particular invoice has come in well under the PO, we can actually have that go through without needing another step of approval. We can do other things like, for example, if there is no purchase receipt, we can instruct the system to then go back to the claimant of the PO, where they can actually acknowledge that they received the goods or the services and then put it forward. Again, in that case, it would still skip John Red, the approver, but it would add the claimant as an approver because the claimant is needing to acknowledge and do a goods received note, for example. So there's a variety of different flows we can structure here. Obviously, in this demo, we can't actually talk to all of them. But in this case, I'll simply go ahead and submit this forward. It'll skip John Red. It'll go straight to my finance team. So we'll switch things over now to the finance team. So we'll log out of here, log back into Jackie's view, which is a finance person. And as Jackie now, I've got the tax invoice, the reimbursement, the Amex card, even the purchase receipt. What I'll do is I'll select all and we'll finalize these. And then we'll go into exporting the claims. I just finalize all of those, obviously, for the sake of time. You can go into doing things like as we did as an approver, change coding and all of those things. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and send these out now to advanced in my case. Obviously, we can export to EXO as well. What I'll do is I'll just show that to you via the advanced export. So we'll go and send things out to my advance, doing an export for bills. So I've got my reimbursement, my tax invoice. We'll simply select all and export these claims. Now I'm just going to do essentially send to Maya, and that'll take a couple of seconds. We'll come back green, in which case it's been sent. While that's working away, oh, in this case, I think that particular one hasn't gone through because it's got an error, but this one has. So what happens when there's an error? The system will actually send you an email telling you exactly what went on. So I can actually hop into my Gmail here and show that to you as well, because that's obviously a key point here to notice. So it's saying there was an error here. The bill details sub-account 1000 cannot be found in the system. So whatever sub-account I selected here, I haven't set up on my demo site. Obviously, this is a demo account, so there's quite a mismatches. But I've just essentially, what I've done here though is I've got that other one that's gone through. So if I click that, it'll actually take me straight to the bills and adjustments here. So it took me to that unique particular bill. Obviously, I've got all the things that I selected and mapped into advanced that have been flown through here. I can also go back into the document directly from here. So if I click that link, it takes me back to Expense Manager to that particular tax invoice, where I can also see what purchase orders it was matched with, what purchase receipts it was matched with, what else has been selected here. I can see approval flows, and obviously there's that back and forth between my Advanced Expense Manager, which is quite neat. I can also do similar things for the journal. But essentially a quick note here is we can do things like sending the purchase order to MyApp Advance. We can do things like sending the purchase receipt to MyApp Advance. So there's always those back and forth things. We can always sync purchase orders from MyApp Advance back into Expense Manager as well. So there's all those options. With MyApp Exo, the difference here is because obviously MyApp Exo is limited in terms of APIs and whatnot. So really the integration, there's a flat file integration. So when you've created the export, you can always come into it and simply download the expense report, or essentially the export file that we'll configure for you, and upload that into Exo. There are also ways to automate that process a little bit more, which while it's not an API, we can do things like setting up essentially like a FTP server type of things, where it automatically every hour, every 6 hours, every day extracts a file and uploads there. Whereby all of the data is kept up to date on a daily basis that way. But that's a really quick wrap here. Of course, there's so much more that I'd like to show you, but I think if I keep going with this, we might be here till midday at least, if not more. So I'll simply just hop out of here and I'll actually pass this back to Phil here. Phil, thanks everyone.
Great. Many thanks for the demo, you see. Just adding to that, in terms of integration, we work with both MYB Advanced and EXO, as you see was saying. So we're expanding on the features that you're getting as standard. So we're adding things like OCR scanning to obviously eliminate and cut out that data entry, the mobile app to allow your staff to work from anywhere at any time, the approval workflows, mileage tracking, credit card feeds, plus obviously a whole lot more. I know for the webinar today, we've got quite a number of clients across a broad range of industries and sizes. So if you would like to learn more about the platform or to organise a one-on-one demo, taking into account obviously your own company's unique scenarios and workflows, feel free to either reach out to the team directly here at Expense Manager by the details on your screen, or jump on their website, or simply reaching out to the team at Momentum Solutions. You can then tee up a personalised demonstration from there. Just on the back of that as well, our offer to any of the Momentum clients who decide to schedule in a demonstration following the webinar, who they actually choose to implement the system, you'd receive your first month free. And don't forget as well, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we do have that ROI calculator that you can get access to as well, free of charge. That way you can jump in, get your own numbers in there and actually see what your ROI would be on the investment for the system. So what I might do from here, I might pass back over to yourself, Pete, to sort of run through the Q&A so we can start going through any questions that anyone had throughout the demo.
Thanks, Phil. So far, the chat is pretty quiet. So Yasir must have done a really good job and answered everybody's questions as you went through the demo. Are there any questions that people want to ask? If so, just use the raised hand on the reactions, and we can do it, face to face. Nothing coming through so far, Phil.
So no, that's okay. Yeah, like you said, it could just be that your CES has done a great job for the demo. I think we've got a couple of people jumping on. Hi, did you have a question? Do you want to...
Okay, one from Sander. What's an average implementation cost?
Yeah, so it really does vary based on the size and volume and what modules you'll be taking on. But to give you an idea, for a straightforward setup, taking on either the expense or invoice modules, it's about a 3,500 implementation. So that's probably a good starting point. And then obviously it would just adjust from there based on what modules you're taking on, what workflows, what system we're integrating with. But that's probably a good starting point.
I think it might be worth adding just on that note. That also covers things like support and training costs and really everything from building the database through getting you at the door with a system that's live, and then also the ongoing support thereafter.
So a question from Jeanette. How does the credit card transactions come in from the bank?
Yeah, so for the credit cards, if it's a corporate credit card scheme with any bank, not just across ANZ, but globally, we can receive a live data feed. So all the data feeds in our system actually come from the card issuer directly, so from Visa, MasterCard, American Express themselves. So if you're in a corporate card scheme, we can get that daily feed through. If you're in a small business or a personal card scheme, it's just a matter of uploading a data file with the transactions. Either way, whether it's a daily feed or the upload file, the actual data itself is the same.
Just a quick addition just to that as well, sorry, Phil. We're also adding things like virtual cards very quickly, probably within the next 2 months or less, really. In which case, it'll be an expense manager card you'll be able to issue and manage in here. In which case, obviously, the feed would be pretty much instant.
Next question from George. What about coding to jobs and sub-jobs as opposed to GL codes, which have a different format?
Yeah, so absolutely. We've got many clients already code to jobs and sub-jobs already. Obviously, in the demo today, I think you see was really, I suppose, targeting it towards coding it directly through to a GL or an expense account. But that doesn't have to be the case. If you're a very much a job-focused client, we can certainly code to jobs as well.
Next one coming from Hein. And I apologise if I pronounced that incorrectly. How could we use the credit card to pay for a supplier invoice which has already been processed in Exo?
So you can pay the supplier, like obviously if the supplier does accept credit card payments, you could just put it on your card exactly as you would as per normal. And that can then go to a clearing account to then offset the bill that's already been entered into my Exo. But just, I suppose, adding to that as well, like as a part of the virtual card offering, that's one of the real key points. We've got quite a number of clients putting their hands up for the virtual cards. And that means that when you receive a supplier invoice, you can actually generate a one-time card number to pay that supplier invoice. So rather than actually giving them your reoccurring card number and them having access or storing that, it's just an extra fraud prevention. You can actually generate a one-time card number. It's actually fixed for the dollar value of that supplier invoice as well. So they can't actually charge above or beyond that. So it's a one-time card number just for that one supplier invoice.
Any more questions that people want to ask at this stage?
No, that's excellent.
Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there. If there are any questions that spring to mind, then please get in touch either with myself or with Phil on the email addresses that we showed before. This session has been recorded, so attendees will be sent a link to the video so you get the opportunity to watch it at your leisure. Another one from Jeanette: is inventory tracking possible?
It is possible. We can run on the purchase orders plus the goods receipt and invoices. So for the multi-line invoice scanning that you see mentioned in the demo, but I think we just didn't have time to go into in too much detail, we can actually scan the inventory codes or stock item numbers from the supplier invoices themselves per line item, along with the quantity details as well. So yes, it is absolutely possible to go down to that level of detail tonight.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your attendance and participation, everyone. And I hope you have a drier Thursday than it looks like we're getting here in Brisbane. It's bucketing down at the moment. Yeah, thanks for your attendance, and thanks to Phil and Yesaya for a great session.
No worries. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for the Momentum for having us on.
No worries.
Bye for now.
Bye.